I'm recording. You walked away. What motivated you to join the military?
Money for college.
That's it?
That was a big push, yeah.
Tell me a little about your time in boot camp.
The highest of highs, lowest of lows. There's some really mentally and physically painful moments, and then there was the funniest moments because of that.
Okay, what is your what is or was your primary job after training MOS? What is MOS?
Well, mine was a rate, and that was construction electrician in the Seabees. It's a mobile construction battalion. It's on land.
And where did you serve the majority of time in service?
Probably Southern California, San Diego, LA area, Ventura County.
Lucky.
Point Navy, yeah, it was beautiful. The Pacific Fleet always hung out there, and that was what everybody wanted to be attached to.
But did you
I was in
request
Hawaii
it?
a couple different times. You could put in requests, but I don't think that they ever paid attention much to that. But I was in the SAM program, which was college guys. So I was there for the first year, and then back home, and then did annual trainings after that.
Okay. What rank are you most proud to have earned and why?
Well, E5, because you had 2 bars on a crow that you got to put on your cap.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
It's just an enlisted rank. You're pretty much just serving time. You get through E3, and then E4, E5 you just test into.
And then you were done at that point.
Pretty much. I mean, first class, that's second class petty officer. A first class petty officer in the Navy would have been really cool, but that would have been a little bit more time for me. And I was done in 2001, I believe.
When did you join?
1988.
And you were what? Navy.
Navy CB.
Which medals or citations are you most honored to have received and why?
Well, I was really happy about the sharpshooter because that was really hard for me to attain, and I got it in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Is that with a certain
Doing
weapon
training.
or all weapons?
Yeah, it's with the M16. It's at 300 meters. You got to do it in a whole bunch of different standing, prone, different positions, and you got to shoot pretty on target. I was on fire that day.
Tell me about some of the special people you met.
A bunch of guys that were different than me, that I was always happy to see, but when we were in the civilian world, we never hung out together. So it was unique relationships. You could have a lot of fun with everybody. We were all different. A lot of funny stuff came out of it too.
What was the best and worst military food you were served and why?
MRE pressed hot dogs.
Pressed?
They were pressed. So you get the hot dog meal when you first get a meal ready to eat. That's how it's on the plastic. You rip that thing open, and it's just a square of some kind of processed meat that's worse than Spam.
Some people like Spam.
This was worse.
Tell me a funny story you experienced that could only happen in the military.
Well, there are a lot. I mean, you never step out of line. When you're told to be quiet, you're quiet. When you're told to do something, execute something, that's what you do. If you don't, you get reprimanded.
How?
Well, in the Navy, it's mostly verbal abuse, which can be really funny. But
How can it be
when
funny?
it's angled at you, it's not so funny. it's more jarring. But when it's smashing somebody else next to you because they did something foolish, stupid, or they just fumbled, it's pretty entertaining. We all get a turn.
How did your military experience affect your life today? How has it impacted your family, career, work?
You learn limits.
relationships?
You learn physical limits. You learn some mental limits too, because you're definitely tested. When I first joined the military, I was off in San Diego. There were 4 of us that were bunked together, 2 and 2, and out of the 4 of us, I was the only one to graduate the boot camp. So it was a real mental struggle for us. I mean, they certainly break you down, and they need to know that you're mentally stable, that you can get through it. I think 2 of my guys just failed on the mental aspect, and the other one physically. He had it together, but foot injury prevented him from graduating with us, and then he ended up, I ran into him before graduation, and he was being sent home later that year at some point. He was put on general duty, which essentially is just cleaning up the base. And so sometimes maybe a little bit of luck is involved, that you don't take on an injury through some of your physical training too.
There are a lot of questions on here. What challenges did you face? You've touched on all this with your answers.
Well, when we were activated for the Gulf War, that was probably the scariest time of my whole enlisted career. And,
But
when we were going, that's how I knew that the ground war was over in 5 days, because
Knox is in his underwear.
we were all activated, the whole battalion. We all went to Southern California, Point Hueneme, which is outside of LA in Ventura County, and it was a scary time. That first week, the war had started when we were in the air going to LA, and 5 days later, our forces pulled back. War seemingly was over, but it wasn't over. There was rumor that we had orders going to Saudi Arabia at the time, because we were friends with the yeoman, which is an administrative assistant to the command, and he kind of was in our college group, so he kind of gave us a heads up, guys, we were going, and most of the battalion was unaware. They started to put together special details, and I was put into one that got nicknamed the Savage 7. There were 7 that were hand drafted by the command, which was about a dozen highest ranking officials or officers in our battalion of 1,200. And so we had different training than the others. And then 2 days before 2 weeks military training was up, the command made an announcement that our orders to Saudi Arabia had been canceled, to a lot of groans. I knew it, and I was wondering why it wasn't canceled sooner, but at that point in time, that was whoever was in charge at the time deciding to pull back, and that was the elder George Bush pulling back, and not occupying Iraq. So our orders were canceled, and I soon went home days later.
Why did you choose that branch, the Navy?
My mom, I was actually signed up to be with other high school buddies in the Army infantry. My mom was terrified. It's infantry. My dad was in the Navy, and so she got me to agree to see a recruiter named Art from the Navy, and he came to our house and asked me what I wanted to do. I pretty much told him I liked construction. He then pulled up, said, we got a perfect line for you, perfect training, showed me everything, showed me where I would be going, and California is a lot more exciting And then he also pulled up another classmate of mine that was older than me that was in the same battalion that I'd be going into. And I was super thrilled because he was on the football team and he was an elder to me, an upperclassman. I had no idea that he had went into it. And so I told my buddies that I was changing it up and I signed with the Navy. I was the first to leave for boot camp that year, senior in high school.
And why are you no longer in the Navy?
When Zane was born in '97, that year I had orders to go to Sydney, Australia for training. I was all excited about it and I thought, okay. I had re-enlisted for another 6 years in the reserves and I thought that was going to be pretty cool. Little did I know that in '97 that my detachment would get orders to southern Afghanistan. I had no idea, but my dad, your dad, and you had asked me not to go if there was anything I could do, and obviously you told your family. And both dads had said that I had done my time, and it was time. And now I had a family, and maybe it was time to be done if I could be, and I could. So I got convinced by them to not leave our young family. Zany was a baby, and put in for my 2 weeks, or put in for my inactive ready reserve status, and it just wasn't coming to me. And normally that would process out inside a month. It took several months for them to release me. I didn't understand why. Once I did get released and approved for inactive ready reserve, 2 weeks later, all my buddies got notice that they were getting activated for southern Afghanistan. Our whole detachment was. And that's a portion of the battalion. And I got calls from some of my college buddies that were in it saying, we're going, did you get the orders? And I said, I did not. They go, well, we're leaving. And they were saying when, and I said, I'm not. I put in for an active ready reserve. I had not told any of them my plans. And they were shocked. They said they were leaving. They couldn't believe it. And so that was in 1997. And that detachment was deployed for 11 months. Later on, 2 years after that, they got deployed for another 2 months, or another additional 10, 11 months. Same detachment. But I never went.
What else can you think of that would be good to share?
Well, it was overall a great experience.
What were you building? What did they have you doing?
Everything from
Fencing?
condominiums to fence, miles of fence, not just a section of fence. I mean, these things were just miles on end. Commercial buildings, equipment, heavy equipment buildings. I mean, we did it all. We were in Coronado Island. I was working there, and that's where the SEALs train. So I've seen a whole bunch of Navy SEALs in training, and every time we'd walk out, and I almost hated to walk out around them in training because it's a much stricter training. And so all of the enlisted that were in it would stop what they were doing to salute us as we walked by, and it was, we didn't need that. So I always, for the sake of them, tried to avoid them at all costs, because I felt guilty that they would have to stop and salute me. They were doing something that was much more grueling. So they were getting dumped in the sea, having to swim with their hands and legs tied, and I was just building things. So.
What did you think of the SEALs?
It's impressive. I was happy to help build on that island for them. Nicer quarters and things. Hawaii was my most fun training. Did it twice. And there they had us building condominiums. You could see the damage, the pocket marks from all the aircraft that had fired upon the buildings out there in Pearl Harbor. Still from the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II. Still existed. The only thing different was they painted over it. Structures that were, that had the damage on them obviously had been tested and they were just safe. And they left well enough alone. A lot of neat stuff.
What did your dad do in the Navy?
He was aviation's mechanic, so he worked on the F-18 Hornets and the Blue Angels. He worked on those planes too. It's the same plane. So he learned a lot. He himself learned a lot about the controls aspect of electrical stuff, as to where I was doing just the grunt power supply stuff.
So
He was in during Vietnam.
So
He was
I
in
feel
the
like it
ship
took
during
like
Vietnam.
a year. I feel like it took a really long time for you to get your your honorable discharge paperwork. Why did it take so long for that? Is that just standard?
Oh, that was standard. It was getting my release into being inactive ready reserve, but also you don't get your discharge until you're fully out. So they still had me as an inactive ready reserve from 97 to 2001, when I officially had completed my contract. And once that happened, that's when I got my honorable discharge papers. At any point in time, if they really needed me back in it to fill a billet or a spot in a platoon or a squad, or that rate, they would have reactivated me. They had that they had that power, and that potential was there. And that's instead of doing a draft, they'll just pool us military men that are on the bench essentially up until the expiration of the contract.
I have other. Okay, so you had there was an officer who was responsible for letting you go. What happened to him?
Well, I was told that same commanding officer that had finally signed off on the release to my inactive ready reserve status. Obviously, they knew there was a freeze on all this of us transferring, or they kept me frozen for some reason. He took it upon himself, obviously, to me, he must have, to release me. He was commanding officer of our drill site, and I was told later that year he was in DC. I don't know if he was at the Pentagon, I assume, but he had committed suicide at his desk, and that was in '97.
What was his name? Do you remember?
I don't remember his name. I can find it out. I don't remember what he looked like. That's about it.
I have a lot of things I remember about this. What else? Can you think of anything else? Do you still talk to a lot of those guys?
A lot, no, but a few, yes. But I communicate very loosely. One in particular that was close with me, he fights alcoholism, and that's a tough thing. He'd invited me over to watch a football game one day, one week. I showed up. He greeted me with a rifle in his hand because he didn't recognize me at first. As soon as I spoke, he said my name. He'd been drinking. He invited me in. Didn't remember inviting me for the week to be there. That's how serious his alcohol problems are. And
How is he now?
a couple other buddies knew that I was going to go see him. They thought it was terrific because they knew that he needed it. He had done 2 stints in southern Afghanistan, and he had told me after the first one he thought it would be really neat. The second time was not so good. I don't know what happened to him there, but he didn't deal with it very well. And after that, I just couldn't go see him anymore because you never knew what would happen. There could be something of an accident happen. It's just kind of dangerous. Another one that I stay in contact with, I haven't gotten together with. He wants to. I would like to. Loved him. Had a lot of fun around him, but we have families and we're busy. There's never enough time to do what you want to do.
Nope.
Priorities.
Okay, I've got 20 minutes worth of information. The boys will like this. Okay, thank you, babe.
Love you.
Love you. Veterans Day.